Good morning, America. This is another handy dandy episode of the Big Buddha Podcast, episode 10. Getting it in, back once again. I'm sorry for the blackout silence for the last couple weeks. I really haven't quite been feeling like myself lately, and it's hard for me to do the show whenever that is the case. You know, it's hard for me to talk on a microphone for a whole hour to myself when I can't hardly stand myself. And so yeah, but I mean, I'm back at it. Today was a special date. You know, it's 9/11, and so we got a lot to get into. However, you know, it is one of those things. I noticed that September is National Suicide Prevention Month, which is a great thing. As someone that deals with depression on a regular, you know, it comes in waves for real. But I've been dealing with it for years, and I don't quite understand it, even though I have it, you know, because sometimes, you know, you're just in your head, and sometimes you're sad for no reason at all, and it really complicates things like motivation and just, you know, it gives you apathy, and, you know, it really robs you of your ambition in a lot of ways. So depression's a real issue. Suicide prevention is a great cause. Make sure you just, you know, I understand, like, I'm not asking y'all to be like foot soldiers for this, you know, suicide prevention thing, but what you can do in your real life is just reach out to your homies and your family and your loved ones, and, you know, make sure everybody's good. This year's been real hard on us. 2020 has undoubtedly been the craziest year in my life. You know, I was born in 1990. Another record year would probably be 2001 because of what we're going to talk about later, but 2020 probably the undoubtedly the craziest year in my life that I remember, you know, because obviously they had like the riots in 1992, LA riots. You know, I was 2 years old, you know, and I live in the Midwest, so that wasn't prevalent for me. That's not like something that really caught my attention until later in life, which a lot of these things did, including 9/11 for real, even though I was 10. But 2020 has been special in the way that, you know, we've had a series of things all happen, tragedies and a lot of things that are complicating this year all happen at once. And, you know, and I don't need to tell y'all, I'm sure you guys, you're dealing with the same world I'm dealing with right now. And it's hard to go outside some days. It's hard to, you know, really fathom what we're all going through. And, you know, this, you know, disease, this virus, you know, running rampant, people losing their houses, there's protests, there's shootings, there's riots, there's, you know, we got hurricanes, natural disasters coming out of left field. You know, honestly, I think we should have, like, I saw something that said there's white people in Egypt that pulled out these tablets out of a fucking well. And it said, like, when the translator read the fucking tablets, it said something about a curse. Like, I'm put that shit back. On behalf of white people, I just want to say we don't do that shit. Don't do that shit. Go, you know, to fucking Iceland or wherever the fuck your ancestors are from, and dig over there. Maybe they'll bless you, but you go digging up tablets with, you know, messages of curses on them, and you go through Pharaoh's tombs and raid that shit. Now they're in museums. Like, leave that shit alone. That's probably why we're here. That's probably how 2020 got the way it is. You know, real talk. I think there's a curse on, you know, not to mention that all of America is built on Indian burial grounds. You know, that probably doesn't help either. I said Indian, Native Americans. I understand that's, you know, offensive. And you know what's fucked up? They started calling them Indians off of, like, because Christopher Columbus was fucking retarded. He was dumb, and when he, well, maybe he wasn't dumb. He was probably smarter than me because he sailed on a boat across oceans and whatever. But I'm saying Christopher Columbus thought he was in India. That's why they called him Indian. So, yeah, that's dumb. But Native Americans were here, and we, you know, obviously all of our businesses and homes and villages are all built on land that they owned and probably were ran down on, you know, and so that probably doesn't help either. I think the chickens are coming home to roost here in 2020. I don't need to tell you all that, though. Like I said, you guys are living in the same fucking world I am. There's social media warfare out here. It's division and hate, and the year of the Karens. There's just Karens coming out of nowhere, left field, right field. They're coming out the blue, man, and you can't go to the store. What is, like, grown adults, right? Like, I imagine most of y'all have kids. I don't have kids, but most of y'all have kids. And if you do have kids, I hope that on some level you're teaching them manners and how to behave, and that, like, it's childish to throw temper tantrums. What the fuck are you thinking when you go to the supermarket and you have a full-on meltdown in front of your toddler because they wanted you to wear a mask for 10 minutes or whatever? Like, since when do we just freak out when we don't get what we want? You know what I mean? Like, are y'all that tight? Are you that on edge? Is your blood pressure that bad that, like, you're just, about to snap, And if that's the case, don't own a gun. put the bottle down, or, quit taking Xanax or whatever. And that's, I don't know what you're doing that's making you rage out. Maybe it's steroids, or I don't know what's in the water, but it's definitely the year of the Karens, and, these are adults need to be dealt with. Like I said, I imagine you teach your kids better than that, and then you freak out like that. So 2020 has been erecting the Karens and the Chads out there. I don't just want to attack women. It's definitely on both sides of the coin. There's Karens and Chads. And sometimes, you'll have like a rare occurrence where you encounter a Karen and a Chad in the wild, and that's disastrous. It's just, especially when they're together and they're Karening each other, they're amping each other up. It's fucking awful. There's a time like where being assertive is beneficial in a lot of situations. But you can be over assertive and it comes off rude, and then it amplifies the situation to where you are now freaking out, possibly going to jail. Just calm down. Calm down. Love your neighbor. We're all dealing with a tough time right now. There ain't no reason why we got to be fighting over fucking, like sports or politics and shit. Everything leads back to politics, and it's fucking frustrating, because we can't even talk about civil rights without getting back to fucking good old red and blue politics, and it's just such bullshit. I have no stamina to have these conversations with people anymore. I'm done. I'm retiring my sword. I'm hanging it up. I'm not doing no more social media warfare if I can help it. It's for my own mental well-being. I got my opinions. You got your opinions. I don't need to try to change your mind, And if you're a racist or something, you're probably not going to get your mind changed anyway. So, it's one of those things. I'm just done. I'm done with it. 2020 broke me in that way. And all of this has kind of been weighing on the reason why I didn't do a show in a couple weeks, but it's no excuse. If you guys are rocking with me, if you're still listening, and, you have been listening, you showed support, maybe you messaged me and was like, hey, motherfucker, where's the next episode? I truly appreciate that shit in my heart. It helped motivate me. It gave me a little bit of ambition back, and just, reminded me why the fuck I'm doing this. And it's more than just about me, But I'm going to take a sip of this water, and then we're going to move on because I got a lot to cover today. Today is a special date, my friends. Today is 9/11/2020. 19 years ago was a tragedy. A little over 3,000 American citizens died in quote-unquote terrorist attacks in the city of New York and other places. And we're going to get into that. It's my favorite rabbit hole to jump down, one of my favorite rabbit holes to jump down. And I feel like not enough people know about the inner workings of what was happening and what did happen and what transpired, and the narrative that they sold us and what the narrative was able to do for America and for the war machine as a whole. So hold on one sec. Moving on. 9/11/2020. The Twin Towers were collapsed to dust, killing about 3,000 plus people as a result of supposed terrorist attack perpetrated by the Muslim extremist Al-Qaeda. Many demolition experts, people around the world, have said the footage of the incidents looked like a controlled demolition, despite the narrative, what they told us. Also, many people that were there said to have heard and felt huge explosions before and after the planes had made contact, including bombs said to have gone off in the basement and the lobby region of the towers. Now, the myth, and a myth is something that's commonly known to be wrong or false. And at this point, I think there's enough evidence to call, the narrative that they gave us about 9/11 a myth. Led by Osama bin Laden, there were 19 hijackers. They took over 4 commercial jets with box cutters, and while evading air defense systems, NORAD, they hit 75% of their targets. As a result, World Trade Center Towers 1, 2, and 7 collapsed due to structural failure through fire enriched by jet fuel in a pancake fashion. While the plane that hit the Pentagon was not only never photographed or filmed, but it also vaporized completely on impact, as did the plane that crashed in Shanksville. The claim there is that there were no warnings or ways to have predicted or prevented this type of thing. It's a series of inconvenient government failures prevented the adequate defense. So, a bunch of different components were happening that day. There were several defense failures from different branches of the military and otherwise that were all failing at once, conveniently or inconveniently, however you want to look at it. 2 years prior, it's actually fact that NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons, and one of the targets was World Trade Center. Even though they said they couldn't have predicted this 2 years before 9/11, they ran the exact same drill with the exact same situation on the exact same building. And, yeah. The cover of the 1997 FEMA response manual had an image of the Twin Towers caught in some crosshairs, like you would be looking through a scope of a gun. There's crosshairs in it, and almost like you're taking aim at the Twin Towers. That was on the FEMA response manual in 1997. It was the cover. You can look this shit up, by the way. A lot of this information I'm getting from documentaries that I had watched over the years. Shout out to Peter Joseph. He runs Zeitgeist. If you haven't seen Zeitgeist, go watch the shit. You're going to see a lot of the stuff I'm talking about on there. I'm also drawing information from another documentary made by firefighters and policemen that were there on 9/11 in the city of New York, titled Loose Change. You can rent or buy that on Amazon Prime right now. And it's worth the watch, because you want to talk about how it's disrespectful that I'm saying this shit. Well, you're going to have some cognitive dissonance when you listen to a firefighter or a policeman tell you that this is a controlled demolition. But moving on. The Operation Maskell was conducted in October of 2000, and it simulated a plane crashing into the Pentagon. That was a part of the simulation. Was that a plane that would hit the Pentagon. So for them to say that they couldn't have predicted this, or no one would have known how to prevent this, you've been running tests both at NORAD and at the Pentagon that would show this, 2 years prior, which is not a long time. The Federal Aviation Administration received 52 warnings, all about Al-Qaeda, in 6 months prior to 9/11. So in the 6 months leading up to 9/11, the Federal Aviation Administration received 52 warnings of Al-Qaeda and ignored all 52 of them. And this is the real deal Holyfield shit right here. The head of the Pakistani intelligence, the ISI director, General Mahmoud Ahmed. He was the director from and I probably just butchered that man's name, but you got to deal with it. I'm American, all right? You got to let me live on that. It was spelled weird. 1998 to 2001, he was the ISI director over there in Pakistani intelligence, and he requested that Umar Sheikh wire Muhammad Atta, the lead hijacker on 9/11, that was supposed lead hijacker, $100,000 via wire transfer. No inquiry was ever made as to why General Ahmad was wiring this money to Atta, or he directed someone to wire the money to Atta. On the morning of 9/11, General Ahmad, the man we're talking about who just financed 9/11, was in Washington. having breakfast with U.S. government officials. So, so this man sends the lead hijacker. This is all facts, by the way. He's the head of Pakistani intelligence. He's the ISI director from 1998 to 2001. Awfully convenient time for him to retire after something like this happens. He directs Umar Sheikh to send Amar Atta $100,000 via wire transfer. And then, on the morning of 9/11, he's having breakfast with government officials in Washington. The 9/11 Commission stated that the financing of the attacks were of, quote-unquote, little practical significance in their official report. Isn't it important who funded fucking 9/11? Doesn't that matter? Like, how you going to say it's of little practical significance to our report? I don't understand that at all. That just flabbergasted me. Even now, even just reading it, I was just like, wow. Two of the hijackers attended flight schools, conveniently, ran by the U.S. military prior to the attacks. In the 2 years leading up to the attacks, they had attended flight schools. And one of them, the one that was supposed to have crashed into the Pentagon, we'll talk a little bit more about him later, but he was a terrible pilot. And he had ran this obstacle course, supposedly, in order to vaporize a plane into the building. But yeah, we'll talk more about him in a little bit. The hijacker's passport was found in the rubble despite everything else being reduced to dust. Now, one of the firefighters in that Loose Change documentary I was telling you about was saying that, it's towers, 20 something, or I don't remember how many floors, how high the Twin Towers were, but it's skyscrapers. And these are office buildings, and he's going through the rubble, and, there's molten steel, and he said everything's reduced to dust. And he said he doesn't find a desk. He doesn't find a phone. He said the biggest piece of a phone that he found was like half of a keypad that was all melted and mangled, and so for them to find these passports of the hijackers intact at the bottom of a rubble heap is laughable at best. I don't understand how like I said, I was 10 years old. I would have bought anything at the time, but the American people really ate that shit up in 2001. It's crazy. Many of the hijackers are actually still alive, and some have come out and said that they used my info and my identity, but I'm alive and well. I've never even flown a plane. So, there's that. And a lot of them, they've either captured, and they exist in Guantanamo or, stuff like that. But a lot of them are still over in the Middle East. They still work for Al-Qaeda, which we created. You want to talk about Al-Qaeda? Well, Osama bin Laden, who was the head of Al-Qaeda, he was like royalty over there, first off, because his family was very, very wealthy. And he also fought with American troops in Desert Storm, was trained and all of that by American soldiers in Desert Storm, fought beside us. And we created Al-Qaeda as a group over there that would help us do that. Now, fast forward, we create ISIS to fight Al-Qaeda. And now we're fighting ISIS. And that's crazy. You can look up pictures. There's pictures of John McCain at the conception of ISIS. He's there, got his picture taken and everything. So you can look that shit up too if you want. But, that's nuts to me that, all this shit crazy. They found their passports at the bottom of the rubble, even though there was all dust. They're all alive and well. At least 7 of them. This was the case, and 5 of them have actually been linked to U.S. military institutions for those flight schools. Now, getting into it deeper, I'm going to talk about Osama bin Laden a little bit. In the early 1950s, bin Laden worked... I'm sorry. 50s, he'd be really old, huh? In the early 1980s, bin Laden worked with operatives from U.S. intelligence to the Pakistani military and Arab states. So he's all over. He's linked up with U.S. intelligence, Pakistani military, the Arab states, all that good shit. Because, like I said, his family's super wealthy. In 2001, Bush administration orders FBI and intelligence agencies to, quote-unquote, back off any and all investigations involving the bin Laden family, including two of Osama's relatives, Abdullah and Omar, who were living by CIA headquarters in Fowler Church, Virginia. So, two of bin Laden's brothers, or relatives, I guess they're cousins, Abdullah and Omar, conveniently live right by CIA headquarters in Fowler Church, Virginia. Post 9/11, while Osama is still public enemy number one, he's freshly the most wanted person in the world. He is marked down to have spent 2 whole weeks at an American hospital in Dubai, and he's treated by an American doctor and was also visited by the local CIA agent that we had stationed over there. How is that possible? That he is treated by an American doctor and our CIA agent visits him on record, and we still haven't found him. I think it was years after that, that we ended up finding him in a cave or whatever the fuck actually happened. Nobody's ever gonna know. This guy might still be alive. They showed us. I mean, I don't know. He did look dead, but at the same time, that could have been another guy with a beard. The Tupac effect. There's no evidence linking bin Laden to the attacks, real shit, outside of the video where he supposedly admits fault for 9/11. Now, this is where it gets sticky. Arabist Dr. Abdel El Hussein, I think, said that I have carefully examined the Pentagon translation. It is very problematic. At the most important places where it's held to prove the guilt of Osama bin Laden, it is not identical with the Arabic. And also the professor of Islamic and Arabic Studies at the Asia-Africa Institute at the University of Hamburg said, American translators who listened to the tapes and transcribed them apparently wrote a lot of things in that they wanted to hear, but that cannot actually be heard on the videotape, no matter how many times you listen to it. So there you go. There's people that speak Arabic, and they're listening to these videos, and they're trying to transcribe it themselves. And all of the parts where it admits guilt for bin Laden, they are saying that it's problematic, that the text is not there. Like they're saying that's not what he's saying, and you said that's what he's saying, where he admits guilt. Now the question is, why would Osama bin Laden knowingly incriminate himself? Being public enemy number one's not fun. Why if we're pinning this on him, that's the biggest frame in history. But to say that someone would be in on it and want to be the villain is a little nuts. Because if he was, why would he probably would have just made a video where he did say those things instead of having to broadcast all over Fox News and CNN, which, by the way, Fox News back then was around, but they weren't as big. After 9/11, Fox News blew the fuck up because of a lot in part because of their 9/11 coverage. And a lot of things were said, but a lot of these things weren't said, which is why I'm reading this to you. In 1976, Osama bin Laden's older brother, Salim bin Laden, was looking for a man, and he ended up hiring a guy named Jim Bath out of Texas to handle all of his American investments for the bin Laden family as a whole. Now, Jim Bath, it's interesting. He also happens to be a lifelong friend and former Air National Guard pilot with none other than George W. Bush. And in 1998, George H.W. Bush, the big Bush, he takes trips to Saudi Arabia. And also he took another trip in 2000 to Saudi Arabia on behalf of the company called the Carlyle Group. Now, who is the Carlyle Group, you are asking? The Carlyle Group is said to be linked to the world's largest defense contractors, and all all who since 9/11 have continued to reap massive profits off of the war on terrorism and the Iraqi wars. That's just the truth. On the morning of 9/11, the Carlyle Group was having a conference in Washington. On 9/11, the Carlyle Group having a conference in Washington, which included Osama bin Laden's other big brother, Shafiq bin Laden. 9/11, one of the bin Ladens is sitting in a conference in Washington, kicking it with the Carlyle Group, potentially a member of the Carlyle Group. And, that's just crazy to me. And it gets weirder because when the Twin Towers were the focus. That was the cinematic climax that we all had. We were all watching the towers fall. And, it's one of those things like it's forever going to be burned into my memory seeing that happen. It almost feels like a whole nother life ago. The world back then compared to now, it seems like a distant memory, and I guess it really is. But on the same day, the Pentagon, the narrative is that anyway, that hijacker Hani Hanyor is said to have failed flight school previously. He flew a 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall plane through an extreme obstacle course consisting of executing a 270-degree downward spiral, and he supposedly crashed into the Pentagon with such force that it vaporized the entire plane to nothing. Much like the Twin Towers, the excuse that jet fuel is to blame for not finding evidence of the plane, including the 2 6-ton steel Rolls-Royce engines that were there. I guess jet fuel can burn that amount of steel down to nothing, and we don't find a seat, we don't find a stitch of clothes or a body, but we're able to, despite that being the case, we're still able to identify the bodies through forensics. How does that work? You can't hardly, you knew the number of the plane, but you didn't know shit else, and then you're saying you're identifying bodies? This is kind of like finding the passport at Ground Zero in New York, of the Twin Towers. You're gonna say you found passports, but you didn't find desks and you didn't find any office material. Everything's rubble, everything's dust and molten steel. But at the same time, you found passports that are perfectly good. Over here, you're identifying bodies at the Pentagon, even though we can't even tell that it was a plane. Also, it just happened to be the records portion of the building. Conveniently or inconveniently, however you want to look at it. And I understand a lot of you are going to dismiss all this information I'm giving you. This is all real deal Holyfield shit. You can go look it up for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Directly after the explosions or the plane hit, government officials had locked down the scene, and trucks with dirt and gravel were brought in and dumped onto the crash site instantly. Surrounded security camera footage from surrounding businesses and stuff from around the Pentagon were all confiscated by the Department of Justice, and they refused to release the footage. So anything that could have seen a plane flying into the Pentagon, all the security cameras around the Pentagon that could have caught those were confiscated by the Department of Justice. And they decided that we're not going to release the footage. Undoubtedly, they would have released the footage if there was a plane. Why wouldn't you? Shut them up. You got conspiracy theorists out here like me saying, "Oh, I didn't see a plane. Oh, it's awfully convenient. That was the record portion of the building." Blah, blah, blah. If you got a plane, if you have a plane on camera hitting the Pentagon, then show it. Release that footage. Why would you lock it down? Why would you confiscate it? First off. Not much justice there, Department of Justice. And then another one the same day, Shanksville happened, and there was also no evidence of a plane hitting Shanksville. If you look up footage of Shanksville, it's just a big open hole. It's a gash in the ground. When you compare photos of Flight 93 in Shanksville to photos of other plane crashes, you can instantly tell to the naked eye that they are nothing alike at all. They also claim to find debris 6 miles away from the crash site. 6 miles away from the crash site. They're going to say this is a debris site. We didn't even find a plane. How did you find debris 6 miles away? How are you identifying bodies when there's not a body? Just like, look up footage of it. It's just an open hole in the fucking ground. And they said a plane hit here. It didn't even look as big enough for a plane to hit there. And there's no scraps of a plane anywhere. It's just mind-blowing to me, the shit that we accepted. You know? And part of that really is the fucking pancake theory. You know, which is just one of those things, like, I have watched footage now that I'm older. When I was 10, I accepted it. You know what I mean? Like I said, when you see your teachers crying, it affects you. You know, I realize, oh, okay, this is serious. You know, because they rolled that card in 6th grade. You know, they rolled that card in. And, you know, we watched it on live TV. I got home, my dad was crying. You know, then I realized that it's not only serious, but like, okay, this is emotional for people. Back then, I didn't understand the gravity of the situation. And also, I was 10, so I didn't really have the cognitive abilities to do investigative, you know, things that I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem right. You know, let's look into it. You know, we didn't have the information that we had back then. Now, 19 years later, we have the information. The footage is there. If you actually watch a controlled demolition, I'm not even talking about 9/11. Go type in skyscrapers being destroyed on YouTube, you know, or controlled demolition skyscraper, tall building, controlled demolition. And then watch the buildings come down on 9/11. Watch the controlled demolitions first, and then go watch the buildings on 9/11. And I say buildings because we're going to get into that. But, you know, the pancake theory is that the fires melting the steel caused by the floors weakened by the airplane strikes to break loose from the steel columns, creating a chain reaction that caused it to fall at free fall speed. Now, the core of each tower was supported by 47 massive steel columns. If the theory given was correct, these steel columns would still have been standing 1,000 feet high, despite the floors collapsing around them. So it would have fell like a pancake if what they're saying was true, but the steel beams would still be standing. 47 of them would be standing 1,000 feet high in the air. Wasn't the case. World Trade Center structural engineer Les Robertson said, "We designed the buildings to take the impact of the Boeing 707 hitting the buildings at any location. So anywhere, not just the top or whatever, it could have withstood the plane hitting it anywhere." And the World Trade Center construction manager, Frank DeMarty, says that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts from jetliners. No theory explains how the pancake theory explains how the towers collapsed at free fall speed. Sorry. Without the use of explosives, anyway. When you do some investigating, you find that controlled demolition experts conclude that whenever they do a building like this, they cut the core columns out at an angle as a means to collapse the building. Evidence at the World Trade Center suggests that the same technique was used on 9/11. There was molten metal found in the basement of all 3 World Trade Center buildings for over 6 weeks after the collapse. Hot spots of over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit were documented in the debris that is 200 degrees hotter than jet fuel can even burn. So 6 weeks after the collapse of the buildings, you're still finding molten metal that is 200 degrees Fahrenheit hotter. I can't talk. I'm sorry. I'm high. Fahrenheit hotter than jet fuel can even burn. Period. 6 weeks after. It's an awful lot of time to cool down, you know. And if you watch that Loose Change documentary, hell of firefighters talking about the molten steel, talking about how it was like a foundry and shit. You know, it's crazy. Reports of the 9/11 Commission mention absolutely nothing about the molten steel. Nothing. The 9/11 Commission was put together to investigate what happened on 9/11 and give an accurate report based on the investigation. We'll get into that in a minute, but it's just like they did nothing that was their job. And like I said, explosion demolition experts all suggest this is evidence of heavy amount of thermite being used to melt steel. The chemical reactions cause huge dust clouds as well. So you're having chemical reactions to steel and thermite, and this is how you get pools and rivers of molten metal. And that thermite is often used in demolitions of big, huge buildings. And that's one of those things that we're talking about. They mentioned nothing about thermite. They mentioned nothing about molten metal. None of this was ever, because obviously if you mention thermite, you have to suggest that something was pre-prepared before a plane hit. And they were not willing to admit that at all, for obvious reasons. And the craziest thing to me about this whole thing is Building 7. And not enough people talk about Building 7. Building 7 is not by the World Trade Center's towers. It was not by the towers. It was miles away. And the initial response was like, okay, well, this building caught fire and maybe it collapsed. Maybe the fire was caused from shrapnel. And then they realized that was stupid because obviously it's miles away. How could it get hit with shrapnel? So then they said that there was fires on multiple floors that for the first time in history, first time ever, have caused all the buildings to collapse. They called it a progressive collapse. Even though it fell at fucking free fall speed. It's a progressive, quote unquote, progressive collapse. Absolutely bullshit. No fire in history has ever done that to, a building. Watch the footage of Building 7. Despite molten metal being found at the site, Building 7 was never hit by a jet. It's a 47-story skyscraper, reduced to dust and lava at 5:25 p.m. on 9/11. Reportedly, it had only had fires on a couple floors prior to collapsing, undoubtedly a controlled demolition. 2005 National Institute of Standards and Technology released a bullshit report on the 9/11 World Trade Center Towers 1 and 2. The 10,000-page report does not address the actual collapse at all. In 2008, 3 years later, because it takes that long, 2008, they released their official report on Building 7. They didn't analyze one piece of steel or test a controlled demolition hypothesis at all. You cannot have progressive collapse at a free fall speed. It is physically impossible to do. Can't do it, especially that big of a building. Sorry. It's not possible. Building 7 was undoubtedly a controlled demolition. Go do your investigating. Watch it for yourself. Sub-basement explosions were another thing that when you watch the Loose Change, you'll find out, all these firefighters, and not just firefighters, security guards actually, that worked in the building, said that there were huge sub-basement explosions occurred before the first and second planes hit both buildings, said surviving World Trade Center employees. Explosions from the basement that pushed people into the lobby upwards. So people were in the lobby in the basement, blew out, and it rumbled the floor so hard it made people jump up in the lobby. Now, to my knowledge, there were multiple basement floors. So who knows if it was, B4, B2, B3, but there were people on B1 and B2 that said that they were in there whenever it went off and people died because of ceilings collapsing and, you being right under or right above an explosion that big, big enough to blow out your core columns in the World Trade Center towers. You can imagine how bad that'll be. But the sub-basement explosions push people up. Higher floors reported running downstairs into fire and alternate explosions happening. How is this possible if the plane struck above you? How am I running down the stairs to a floor that has exploded when the plane struck above me? You know, that shit is unexplainable. You know what I mean? And NORAD. Yeah, NORAD's another one. NORAD, this is a big part of, why they said that 9/11 was able to happen. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. But normally, NORAD has fighter jets in the air within 10 minutes of anything that suggests a possible hijacking. They have interception within 10 minutes. So if they have anyone that's a possible hijack thing, it doesn't take 10 minutes for them to respond. They intercept you within 10 minutes, no matter where you're at in the country. On 9/11, their response time, so before they even left the ground, it was 80 minutes. 80 minutes before they even responded. Well, I guess they were already flying, but before they turned around to head in that direction, it was 80 minutes. Huge time lapse compared to what they normally do. At the moment of the hijackings, there were numerous conflicting and overlapping air war exercises going on, including false radar blips. So they had like war games they were doing, and there were multiple overlapping war games, and a lot of them had to deal with hijackings. And so there were false radar blips on the screen to confuse these people. And, they had called in the hijackings, and they were like, there was a hijack and there's a plane flying into the World Trade Center, and the one guy was like on the chatter, he was like, "Is this real life or is this a game?" Because they've been playing games all day. At the same time as NORAD was conducting their exercise, Vigilant Warrior, which was a live fly hijack drill, like I said, 8 sets were dealing with the 22 possible hijack scenarios at one time. And that's real deal Holyfield right there. So you got 8 jets in the area for defense, and they're all playing war games, and there's 22 possible hijackings for these 8 jets, plus the actual hijackings, supposed actual hijackings. So, that's just crazy to me. I gotta tread carefully. I don't want to be disrespectful to people who like lost their people in 9/11, or if you knew somebody, or, if you're just sad about it. I don't want to seem unpatriotic. I'm not blaming the people of America for this. There's a cult inside of the government that I believe, and that's just what I believe, but in the year 2000, NORAD had 67 interceptions. So the year before 9/11, they had 67 interceptions at a 100% accuracy rate. On 9/11, NORAD failed 4 times in one day. And so there you go. The year before, you had a 100% accuracy rate with 67 interceptions, and you fell 4 times in one day. How is that even possible? We talked about the 9/11 Commission as well earlier, and I said we were going to get into that, so we will. The 9/11 Commission, as I stated before, is a commission put together to judge the evidence of the 9/11 surroundings, surrounding the whole incident, and basically interpret the information and deliver an official report to the people based on the information. A problem with that being that, they can throw out whatever they want and they can keep whatever they want. So we'll talk about the collusion within the 9/11 Commission itself. Dick Cheney and George W. Bush requested to meet and be questioned by the commission together at the same time, as opposed to being questioned separately as initially suggested. In fact, the president and the VP were questioned on their own terms entirely. They got everything they wanted. They appeared together. They were not under oath. There was no press or family member is allowed that could attend the meeting. And there was no recording of any kind that was allowed during them giving their quote-unquote testimony or being questioned by the 9/11 Commission about the things that happened. The report was that it was a unanimous report, meaning one commissioner was appointed to review all of the evidence and either report it or not report it. The head commissioner of the board was a man named Philip Zelikow, And he previously served on the transition team of the Bush administration, and he also wrote the draft memo of the Bush administration's National Security Council, and he wrote the preemptive war strategy that was eventually used for the war in Iraq. And, I mean, not that this incriminates him, but he's also a really, really, really close friend of Condoleezza Rice, which is obvious, collusion in there because she was heavily involved in the Bush administration. Right after all this happens, and you're asking yourself probably, why would they do that? Why would they do that? The answer is you have to look at the war on terrorism and what they were able to accomplish by introducing the war on terrorism. You have to see that it riled everybody up and it made everything okay that they were about to do in the Middle East. It validated everything. I mean, even me, we were all gung-ho. There were more people volunteering for the military than ever, going to war. And not to mention, after we got done with Afghanistan, we went on like a rampage. We're like, so Iraq, so Iran. We were just taking over. It was a big power grab from the beginning. Not enough people talk about the oil fields and the poppy fields. Companies like Halliburton, which is ran by Dick Cheney, profited greatly off of the wars. Greatly, 100%. They had huge profit. Why? Because he runs oil fields and does a whole bunch of other stuff that was able to reap benefit off of a war happening, especially when the government contracts you for everything. Why? Because you're the VP. Why wouldn't they? There's a lot of people that make money off this, including the central bank. And they fund both sides of the war. The richest people in the world, they fund both sides. Because I don't know if it's just fun, but I know it's beneficial for sure. And then not to mention we intro the Patriot Act, which ends up stripping rights and invading privacy of millions and millions of Americans, pretty much everybody. If you're on the grid anyway, so to speak, if you use technology in any way, shape, or form, your privacy has been invaded, and they're allowed to. They can kick in your door at any time if you're under a reasonable suspicion of being a quote unquote domestic terrorist, And this is being expanded on by Trump. Not the Patriot Act itself, but this type of forward thinking of how we're going to deal with people that don't agree with the status quo. He doesn't agree with our politics, or he's protesting too much, or he's a problem. So let's take him off the streets and consider him a domestic terrorist. That's basically what happened back then, though, too. They're able to, just based off that assumption, they don't have to kick in your door. You don't even have to know about it. They've gone through your emails, your text messages, everything, just because they can. They have people that's their job, is to go through people's shit all day, looking for keywords and whatever else. But that's wrong. It's wrong, and we've become so accustomed to it because of how fucked up the world is out there. We think that, that's a good thing. Those are the good guys, and they're protecting everybody else. Instead of just looking at it for what it is and saying, okay, well, it's invasion of privacy. And it's completely what it was. And it's been 19 years, and we've gotten so fucking used to it that this sounds like I'm being ridiculous by being upset about it. We do it to ourselves, though. You know what I'm saying? They tie the rope, we kick the chair. We all carry around these fucking computers in our pockets, and we use all these apps and just fly through the terms and agreements, which just allow them to get into all of our personal information and all that shit. We're straight, like I said, they tie the rope, we kick the chair, and we're all hanging ourselves here with their help, And it's not just advancement of technology, it's the advancement of fascism and having overall control over the people of America. And this started in 2001 on 9/11. I heard a story about this guy whose dad was a flag maker, right? Made flags his whole life. And I mean, I'm sure he made several different types of flags. But he said most of their business was, selling American flags. Those are the ones his dad liked to make. And, when his dad died, he inherited the business, And he said in 2001, something miraculous happened. They were just making a decent living. I can't imagine flag making is a booming industry. But he said in 2001, something miraculous for his family happened. after 9/11, post 9/11, there was so much patriotism drummed up that they bought this man's, this guy ended up becoming a multimillionaire selling fucking American flags. Which, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm not complaining about this, but what I'm saying is that's how riled up we were. Like there were, like I said, there were more people willing to die than ever. Sign up for the military, send me to war. And there's a lot of fucked up people that have PTSD that were great American, like they thought they were fighting for the right things. They ended up fighting for industrial, takeover. It's pretty much like they ended up fighting for a monopoly. They ended up taking over poppy fields and oil fields for the, big pharmaceutical companies and for the oil companies here in America. And our government's in on it all. Obviously. It shit's nuts to me, but yeah, he's a multimillionaire post 9/11 because of all the patriotism that was drawn up. Like I said earlier, it made everything they were about to do in the Middle East A-okay. None of us even questioned it. After, they gave us a face, Osama bin Laden, they gave us someone to hate, and, Islamophobia came right after that, and terrorism, war on terrorism. That's all you ever heard on the TV at that point in time. And, and it's almost like it is now. As chaotic as it was back then, it's almost like we don't know. It's like a level of unpredictability that we're not sure. Like, what's today going to be? Who knows, Yesterday there was planes crashing into buildings. What's going to happen today, And they gave it, like I said, they gave us someone to hate. They gave us someone to be mad at. And everything they were about to do in the Middle East as far as the power grab and, weapons of mass destruction. And then we had no evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Oh, shit, well, we took it over anyway. Sorry about that. We went over there and we did a whole bunch of fucked up shit. We killed civilians, not just soldiers. We were killing them. We were killing the people in the streets. And, man, it's just, I don't know. It like I said, it introed the surveillance area, in 9/11 as a whole is something that we'd probably like to forget, but it's important that we remember the facts. And don't get wrapped up in the media's narrative that they spun, the web. Don't get caught up in the web that they wove because, I don't know. There's a lot of things that were left out by the 9/11 Commission that weren't looked at also by the National Institute of Standard and Technology that were purposely altered documents that gave inaccurate reports about what happened on 9/11, and that shit happened for a fucking reason. And everything I said has factual basis. So, like I said in many episodes before, if you don't like me or you think I'm a kook or whatever, that's cool. But go do your own research, before you base a decision on anything. 9/11 is one of those things, like I said, I don't want to be disrespectful to any of the firefighters or police officers that were out there risking their lives or any of the people that, died in the buildings. One of the worst things I ever saw was people jumping, on TV. There were bodies, flying. You could see them jumping out of the buildings because that's better than than burning to death or, dying in a collapse. So they just jumped, That's sad. While that made me sad, like I respected that because, like, you control your fate. I'm not gonna die at the hands of these motherfuckers. You know what I mean? And I'm sure they probably couldn't process what was happening at the time, but that image will always stick with me, man. It's always been something that really saddened me, but at the same time really interested me. And I don't know. There's been not to mention the guy who owns the buildings took out a huge insurance plan right before, like a month before the attacks. Takes out a huge insurance plan. Obviously, that paid off almost instantly. Conveniently or inconveniently, however you want to look at it. But, I don't know. RIP to all the people that died on 9/11. Like I said, 3,000 plus people were sacrificed to forward this war machine that is still continuing to this day. We've been over there for 19 years. And we're still over there. Like, they're just now bringing people back, But we still have, embassies and military bases in other countries. When's the last time you saw another country's military base in America? I know we have embassies, somewhat. but they're nothing like our embassies over there. They're nothing like our military bases are over in the Middle East. Guaranteed that. I mean, it just seems a little hypocritical and unfair for us to, report like Muslims are taking over the world, and then here we are, robbing countries, for their poppy fields and their oil. I know it's deeper than that, but that's really the gist of it. We're filling up our gas tanks on dog tags, and that's the ugly truth, 9/11, man. Like I said, that was one of my favorite rabbit holes to jump down. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, but, I'm going to try not to do these long breaks anymore, y'all. Like I said earlier, it's just one of those things. I haven't been feeling like myself lately. 2020 kind of been having me down, and all this shit around me, and just, it all just weighs, and I've just been feeling that weight lately. I've been collapsed under the weight, and, yeah, I'm going to try not to do that, though, regardless. So you might get some sad podcasts later on. If I deem that better than just taking a break, then I'll still, or if I have some, vital, instantaneous information to deliver to y'all that I think is important, then I'll still do that. I appreciate each and every single one of y'all dialing in, listening to me, giving me a chance. Much love to all y'all. I know I dug in on the conspiracy shit today, but every episode's a little different. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to have some more guests. I got some stoner segments that I want to do, and I'm looking at getting some merchandise produced to possibly, just do some giveaways to show my appreciation for all the people that actually rock with me out there listening to the Big Buddha Podcast. I deeply appreciate that shit. Thank you very much. I hope each and every single one of you have a truly blessed day, and I hope it's special for you. And don't let the man keep you down. We're all in this shit together, man. Make sure you guys call your loved ones on Suicide Prevention Month, and every month, not just September. Just call them every month, and at least once a month, at least. And just check on them. Tell them you love them. Check on your people, man. It's hard out here, man. It's gonna be a hard year. We got more shit to deal with, and I have a feeling it's gonna get worse before it gets better. So let's just stay close to each other, be each other's rocks, and we'll get through this shit, man. Much love, peace, love, conserved water. Y'all take care now. You hear?